Hello, I'm Beth. Welcome to VIP Yoga. So VIP stands for Variations for Individualized Practice. These videos are going to be short tutorials which will take one pose and break down many different variations so that you can find the best version of the pose for your body. We're going to be doing many variations, not every variation. Hopefully the things we try will allow you to mix and match and find the pose that works best for you. So today's pose is going to be child's pose, balasana. You see, I have a variety of props set up near my mat. You're not going to need every prop, but gather your blocks, your blankets, your bolsters, whatever you have, come over to your mat with me and we'll practice some versions of child's pose. I'm going to move over to my mat. So first we're going to do how child's pose is usually taught. It's usually taught in a kneeling version. That's what we're going to look at first, and we're still going to look at plenty of variations taught in that more traditional way. So you'll come to kneeling on your shins, or just watch me. This is not necessarily follow along. These are ideas you can incorporate later. Your feet are together, toes together, and where your knees are is the first thing that we can vary. So often child's pose is taught with the knees together. You fold forward from the hips. Now that's not really a comfortable version of child's pose for me. As you saw, as I went down, my hips started to come up, which is fine, but not really so comfortable. So I'm going to widen my knees, and the width that you widen your knees can vary from a little bit to a lot. The nice thing about widening your knees is it creates space for your body, especially if you're rocking a more abundant body, you've got more space in front of you here. So I'm going to step back down on my heels, and then I'm going to start hinging forward from my hips, starting to crawl my hands out, and the arm position is the next thing we can vary. So I'll show you arms front and back, and then talk about a few more things you can do. So those are a couple options with your arms front and back. As you see, my forehead does come to the ground. My hips lift a little bit off my heels. That's okay though, because it's comfortable for me. If it's not comfortable for you, one option is to grab a little towel or a blanket. You might need something a little higher, like a meditation cushion, or a pillow. It can be anything. It doesn't have to be an official yoga prop. Stick that behind. Now you've got something to rest your bottom on a little bit more. Come forward. And that's a pretty comfortable version for me, even though I don't necessarily need the cushion. It actually makes the pose more comfortable. And that's what we're looking for, how to do the pose in your body so that it feels both accessible and comfortable. Comfortable is really important too. So now you know you can vary your legs, vary your knees. If your head is not comfortably reaching the floor, well, we can do something about that too. So the first is to use your own body as a prop, use your arms. Either fold your arms or do a little fist with your arms to rest your forehead on the ground. So you can do either of those versions if that's comfortable. If it's not comfortable or you're finding that your forehead still doesn't reach the ground, here's where we grab a prop. So I have some blocks. I take one of my blocks, and I'm going to try it on the tall position. And I like when I can feel the block right between my eyebrows, that third eye area. With your head resting there, your arms can go wherever they go. I have mine in front. They can go out to the sides. One last position with the arms that gives a little bit more of a shoulder and a neck stretch, and this is my favorite. And you see I'm still sitting on the cushion. As I said, you can mix and match these. So I could take the cushion away, I could stay seated on it. It's really up to you, to what you want to add into your own practice. So let's see that last version with the arms. I'm going to have my hands either fingers interlaced or palms in namaste hands, my elbows a little bit apart. And so bringing the thumbs to the back of the neck in that position like this, I can feel I draw my shoulder blades a little closer together. I just get more of a stretch if I want to make that a little bit more of an upper body stretch. All right, I'm going to move on to some versions with a chair. I'm going to show you how you can use the chair to rest your head, and then we're also going to pretend that the back of the chair is a wall, since if I turn to this wall, you're not really going to be able to see me. You can use a real wall. So for a chair, when we use a chair in yoga, most often we use a folding chair. They work really well. If you don't have a folding chair, a dining room chair, even your couch would work great for this. So first I'm going to sit with my legs crossed. So this is a slightly different version of child's pose. We're not kneeling now. This is great if your knees bother you or that doesn't feel comfortable. I have a blanket on top of my chair. You can have that if you like, again, optional. And then I'm going to lean forward and see if I can maybe put that same part, as I was talking about, that space in between the eyebrows on the edge of the chair. I might have to slide my chair out a little. So this is a really nice forward folding version of child's pose where I can really feel the stretch in my lower back, but it stays nice and comfortable. Again, comfort is what we're going for. Another version that you can do with this, especially if you don't have a blanket, is crossing the arms. And then you can also use the chair for the kneeling version if you tried a bolster or a block and it still didn't seem high enough for comfort for you. So I'm going to come back to my knees, toes together, and remember, I like my child's pose with my knees further apart. I have to move the chair a little closer to me. And then same thing, folding here from the hips, and my arms can go wherever. I might go folded on my arms. I might come down to my forehead. My blanket is sliding around. Probably the arms version is better for me here. And as we continue, I will say, even if you can do a particular version, it doesn't mean that that's the version for you. So I can do child's pose with no props. I don't always like doing it that way. Sometimes that's not the most comfortable version for me on that day. So you have to pick and choose and see what works for you at any given time. All right, here's where I'm going to flip my chair around. So I'm just pretending that the back of my chair is a wall. Hopefully you can imagine that. I'm going to move a little bit back as if I move away from the wall. So this is going to be an arms extended version of child's pose. I lean forward. And in this version, if I was up against a wall, then I can allow my head to come a little bit more down between my arms. I'm not going to be supported by the floor. It's almost a little bit like a down dog version of child's pose. All right, then speaking of down dog, I want to show you another version of child's pose, or really a variation that's called puppy pose. You can use this to replace down dog as well. So in this version, your arms are extended like we've already done, but your hips, your bottom is up in the air. So it's not leaned back as we normally lean back for child's pose, or in a lot of the variations that I've shown you. So this version can be really comfortable. It's more of an upper body stretch. Again, it may not be as resting for you, so you have to gauge that for yourself. So you'll see my hips stay pretty much over my knees. So hopefully you could tell there I was in more of a down dog shape with an extension from my arms to my low back. I didn't get the soft rounding that we usually get in child's pose, and yet it's still a very valid, another variation that you can try. So part of doing these variations is, where are you looking for the stretch in your body? What do you need for that day? All right, we have a few more to go. I want to show you a propped version of child's pose. This is a more restorative version. Absolutely one of my favorites. It's a great way to really rest and relax. I've fallen asleep in this version. So I'm going to grab my bolster. I love having a yoga bolster at home. I recommend it if you can. If you can't, it's fine to grab a couple of couch cushions, some sturdy blankets. The thing about the bolster is it's a little bit more, it's not as squishy, right? It gives a little bit more heft to it. So I'm going to come right up to the bolster, widen my knees so that they almost come around it, drag the bolster a little bit toward me, start folding forward as if for child's pose, and then I can go face down. I'm not going to do that because you won't be able to see me, or I can turn my head to either side. And if you are turning your head to one side for however long you're practicing the pose, you probably want to switch and do the other side. So that feels really delicious, but there's so many versions even of that to do. I'm going to grab my meditation cushion. You can use a block as well. Put this under the head part of my bolster. Now I've got an elevated version of this, or a little bit of an angle, and this can feel really nice too. Slide down the same way. I love this version too. Note that you can throw in other props as you're doing this. Maybe you still want the blanket or the cushion on your shins. Maybe you want something under your arms. So that's where you get to play with your poses and find what works for you. All right, so the last version that we have of child's pose today, and as I said, this is not an exhaustive list. This is just trying to cover as many versions that might be helpful for you to start with, to try, is lying on the back. This is face up child's. So child is supposed to be a resting pose. In class, you'll hear the teacher say, come to child's pose to rest. If none of those versions feels restful for you, well, it's not going to work as a resting pose for you. So then we need to look at something different. And that's where coming into kind of an alternate, here I'm going to lie on the floor. And then I'm going to draw my knees in the same way I would for child's. I can have my arms overhead if that works. I can reach down toward my feet. I can have my knees close to my body. Or I'm probably going to make them wide because that's the version of child's pose that I prefer. And then I can lie here and rest, and I can still get my rest with that same shape of my body. So those are all the variations I have to show you today. Not every variation that's out there, but enough to give you some ideas of how to play with this pose and make it your own. And that is the purpose of VIP Yoga Variations on Individualized Practice. I hope this was helpful for you. Let me know in the comments. Subscribe and get more like this, and have a great day.